Marino Show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to The Marino Show. I'm your host, David Marino. Here on Awesome Music Television, you see musicians all the time, whether it's in music videos or performances that are live. We enjoy sharing that with you. And for them, hearing is everything. Their hearing is their lifestyle. But hearing is also important for all of us. So today we're profiling RK Audiology, and we're going to tell you some of the services they provide if you're interested in getting your hearing tested. Hey everybody, I'm here with Dr. Tony Milesi with RK Audiology, and we're here to talk about hearing today, so thank you for being with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So, a lot of times when we think about hearing, people go get their teeth checked all the time at dentist appointments, they go get their eyes checked, but hearing seems to be something that people don't go and do anything about until they're having issues. Have you noticed that to be the case even in your own practice here?
Yeah, unfortunately, people neglect hearing a little bit more than we'd like until it gets to that point where they feel like something's really going on. Then they start to investigate and realize, I could have taken care of this maybe a little bit earlier.
Here at RK Audiology, I know you provide a number of different services. What is one of the main things that you provide for patients who are coming in?
Yeah, so we do all sorts of things. The number one thing we do, of course, is hearing tests, hearing aids, everything like that. But here at RK, we also specialize a lot in custom products for musicians, concert goers, people who just want to give it a little bit of a break from the loud sounds. We also do a ton of ear cleanings and a little bit of everything in between.
So the ear cleanings, if somebody's like nervous about coming in to do that, what is the process like? Because I know nowadays there's a lot of technology, even in kind of looking at your ears. I was reading on your website, there's cameras that they use to kind of go in and see if there's any damage. But then in terms of the actual cleanings, what's the process with that? Because some people do get nervous about doing anything that has to do, whether it's dentist, eye doctor, hearing, what have you. How can you put them at ease if they are thinking about coming in for, let's start with a cleaning?
Yeah, for cleanings, I mean, the number one thing we want to do is, of course, take a look in their ears, make sure that there's something in there. And if there is, then we'll kind of assess the best way to go about it. We have a lot of different tools that we can use to take that wax out, and with that, it really depends on the kind of wax or whatever you have in your ear. With that, we have our irrigator, which I really love. I think it's worth its weight in gold. It's amazing. It's going to use some nice warm water to flush out your ears. We also have some tools that we can go in there and get little pieces that are stranded back there to get out. And we have a couple other things as well that we'll use to get those out. But it really just depends on the type of wax that you have.
How often should a person get their ears cleaned? Because again, that's not something even I think of. I think of my dentist appointment. I think of going to get my eyes checked again. But hearing, it's neglected for a lot of us. So how often should you do that typically?
Yeah, so it's really different for everyone just because everyone produces a different amount of wax, even ear to ear. It's one of those things though, if you've never had your ears checked out, you should definitely come in and kind of get a baseline test, get them checked out for wax if there's anything in there. We'll kind of assess and go from there. I have some patients that have to come in every 6 weeks. I have some patients that come in every 2 years. So it's really different for everyone.
My head, my head. My head. It's never quiet in my head. My late friend Martin called it the roaring sound of the devil. Tinnitus is what the doctors call it. You have a tinnitus when you experience a noise in your head or in your ears that nobody else can hear. The sound stems from hyperactivity of the nervous system in our head. But doctors don't know the reason for this hyperactivity, nor its cure.
There are a number of different, things that people deal with hearing. I know like in my left ear, I have like a little bit of tinnitus. That's something that people deal with. When you're talking about those types of things, is there like treatment available for something like tinnitus? How do you kind of cope with that? Because some people have it really loud. Mine is like low, so it's not extremely distracting. But for example, a musician or something that's their livelihood, that could be a major issue. So when you're talking about something like that, are there treatments? How do you approach that?
Yeah, the best treatment that we've found so far for that ringing in the ears is actually going to be hearing aids or amplification. So even a mild amplification can kind of help put the brain at ease. So what's going on is some sensory deprivation. A lot of times with musicians specifically, or people who've been around a lot of loud noises, we start to get a hearing loss and our brain starts to go, what happened to our sound? So after that, it starts to create its own sound and it becomes a feedback loop that creates that little loud or quiet buzzing, depending on who you are. And it's just the brain's way of trying to fill in those holes, kind of, with that sensory deprivation. When we introduce that amplification back into the system, the brain can kind of relax and take a step back and say, okay, I can focus on other things now instead of what I'm missing out on.
The normal process of hearing, however, may become impaired. One kind of impairment is sensory deafness. Sensory deafness occurs when there is damage to the nerve fibers of the inner ear through age, disease, drugs, or prolonged exposure to loud sound. A second kind of deafness, conductive deafness, is due to improper movement of the structures of the middle ear. Conductive deafness can, in most cases, be corrected. A series of standardized tests is given before any attempt at diagnosis or correction is made. In one of these tests, the subject listens to specially selected words. To determine the extent of the hearing loss, the words are amplified to various levels until she can hear and repeat them.
Greyhound. Greyhound.
Greyhound.
Hot dog.
Hot dog.
One of the issues that I think comes up with hearing, as people, whether they're younger or older, there's a self-consciousness about having to wear a hearing aid. You know, especially people who are older, they don't want people to see it sometimes, or it may be embarrassing for them. Are there ways to hide, you know, the actual hearing aids? I know that there's, like I mentioned earlier, technology has changed over the years and things are a lot smaller now. But is there a way that if somebody's feeling self-conscious, like they know they need a hearing aid, but they don't want people to treat them differently or feel like they're older, because it's a sensitive issue for people when your sight or your hearing starts going.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot of great options nowadays. We have some that are completely in the canal, or CIC hearing aids, which are little custom hearing aids that when you put them in, you can't even see them. There's actually disposable hearing aids that we can implant. They stay in there for about 6 to 8 weeks, and then you come back in, we replace it with a brand new one, kind of a subscription service, almost like one of your streaming services. Then there's the ones that go behind the ear. Those have become much, much smaller than they were in the past. And with that, the technology in them has also increased vastly.
What is this?
So this is the implantable device that we were talking about, that hearing aid that we can put in about 6 to 8 weeks. It actually slides right into the ear and goes right into your ear canal, and that's where it lives.
I had no idea that you could actually like implant in. Like, I'm always just thinking of the exterior one, so that's interesting to hear about that.
Yeah, absolutely. They're really small. They look almost like a little foam earplug, and they're a small hearing aid that we can just place in there for the perfect spot for about 6 to 8 weeks, and that's where they live. And then when you come back in, we just take that out and we replace it with a new one.
When you're losing your hearing, the worst thing to do is nothing.
What did he say?
What are some signs of hearing loss? Because we may be going day to day and not even notice that we're dealing with any sort of issue, or we choose to ignore it. What are some major things that people should be on the lookout for if they're concerned about their hearing?
Yeah, the biggest one that I hear reported from patients is having to have people repeat themselves, having to say what or huh all the time, trouble in loud noises, trouble with higher pitched voices, trouble with kids or women's voices. Those are kind of the common ones that I hear a lot for those more mild hearing losses that are starting to become a little more severe.
The human ear. Externally, a flap of skin and cartilage, a gatherer of sound energy. At the center of the gathering organ is a short, cartilaginous and bony tube, the auditory canal, which is sealed off by a flexible membrane. Sound waves are conducted along the canal and fall on this membrane, the eardrum. Because it is suspended only at its edges to the auditory canal, the eardrum can move freely in response to variations in air pressure.
You were saying earlier when you go into people's ears, it's called what? Video? Is it, how do you say that?
Videotoscopy.
Yeah, there we go, because I can't talk. Tell me how that process works for somebody who's coming in if they're going to have their ears looked at in that way.
Yeah, so we'll be able to actually put that view onto the big television screen behind us there, and we're able to take a look in your ear alongside with you. So it's not one of those cases where we just take a look in and we say, oh, everything looks good, and you're like, I still feel like something's in there. We can actually physically show you that there is or is not something, and then we can show you the before and after results. So videotoscopy has really changed the game with that.
Have you ever thought about learning how to play guitar?
I can do like one song.
We're in the Austin area. There are a lot of concerts. This is the music capital of Texas. If somebody just wants to have, you know, a fitting because they want to not have their ears blasted at a concert, can they come here and just get, you know, fittings for their ears or whatever? I don't know what you call them exactly. I guess they're inner ears.
Yeah, so we have custom filtered hearing plugs, so that hearing protection is really big. And like you said, concerts are really big here. I love the music scene in Austin. I think it's the best. When I go out, I use my custom filtered earplugs, and they help just bring down the overall sound but not compromise sound quality as much. It's one of those things, too, that they're pretty versatile. So you can use them not only at concerts, you can use them in loud bars or restaurants. You can also use them in movie theaters, airplanes, all sorts of situations. But anytime that you want to still hear your surroundings around you clearly without having to struggle with the sacrifice of the loud noise around you, they're a great, great option.
What would you say are some of the biggest causes of hearing problems for people? You know, talking about concerts or loud noises, but nowadays with technology or just everybody's on their phones or they have their earbuds in, whether they're working out, we're always listening to something, whether we're on a meeting, what have you. What are some of the lead causes of that? Is it just loud noises, or should there be a certain amount of time that you leave your headbuds in? What are sort of the best practices for that?
Yeah, so headphone use has become very, very popular, of course. The biggest thing that I can say is just don't turn it up too loud. For example, iPhone has a limiter on there, so you can actually turn it on to where you will not turn up the sound loud enough to where it can hurt your hearing. So it's important to keep those factors in mind when you're enjoying music. We don't want to abuse it to the fact that we can't enjoy it later on. Music's really sacred for a lot of people, of course, and we want to keep that going.
So you've been with RK Audiology for how long?
So I've been here for about 3 years now.
So for you getting into, you know, being a doctor and being in this industry, what was it that was the inspiration to do that and to work for RK Audiology? What was it that sort of sparked your interest in providing, you know, that very important service of keeping people's hearing up to par?
So I really just have a want to help people. So my biggest thing is when you come in, we want to make sure your hearing is normal, or we can get it up to that kind of normal area with some hearing amplification. When I was younger, I had an SLP that really inspired me, our speech language pathologist, and I really wanted to help people because she helped me a lot. With that, I went into that field and decided it wasn't quite the right one for me, and I transitioned to our sister field, audiology here. I've loved it ever since, and it gives me a chance to kind of give back and help people the way that I wanted to.
And I'm sure you've heard stories from some of the patients that have come in. Like, what are some of the stories that you can share of maybe a before and after where they really didn't understand how much they were missing by not hearing just the everyday sounds that you hear when you go outside, or just the birds, or what have you?
Yeah, so one of the most common ones we actually hear is actually just from ear cleanings. We'll have someone coming in saying, my ear feels kind of stuffed up, it feels kind of full, I've been having a trouble hearing for the last few weeks, it happened after I went swimming, those sorts of circumstances. With those situations, we can clean that out, and I've seen people say, I feel like I can hear in HD. I mean, it's a game changer, it really is. When it comes to hearing technology, I also have seen that though. We see people for their fitting, and then we schedule them for about 2 weeks out for a follow-up just to make sure how everything's going. We want to make sure everything's correct, and we'll make adjustments based on their feedback. At that time, I've seen people who were very resistant to hearing technology come in with their family, loved ones, and they'll say, I don't want these, I'm not about it. And we'll fit them, they'll go out into the real world, try them out for about 2 weeks, they'll come back and they're a whole new person. You can really tell they're hearing everything that they couldn't hear before. I can put my hand in front of my face and whisper and they can hear me clearly. I can say, what's your favorite food? And they'll be like, pizza. And they light up. So it's great to see that they're getting that stimulation from the outside world that they deserve.
What's the process for ear fittings?
So for hearing aid fittings, the first thing we're going to do is, again, take a look in your ears. That's our #1 step for everything. We want to make sure they're nice and clear. After that, we'll do a hearing test. We want to make sure that evaluation's done as recent as possible. We want to make sure it's fresh and that it's accurate. After that, we'll decide the best technology for you. So we could go with a custom in-the-ear version of a hearing aid. We can go with one behind the ear. There's all sorts. Once we decide that, we will go ahead and fit you with that device using real ear measurements, or RIM. It's really important. It should be a practice standard for everyone in audiology. The reason behind that, it really helps us fit to your prescription of your hearing loss. So without that, it's a little more of a guess and check where people are like, how does that sound? Does that sound good? With real ear measurements, we can really see and give you the benefit that you need and deserve. Once that's done, we'll go ahead and hook them up to your phone and all the fun things with the streaming services, and then we can go ahead and let you go out for about 2 weeks or so, and then we'll see you back like we were talking about.
How long before do they have to get an updated hearing aid? Like, how long do they last, I guess, is the question. I know that wear and tear could be something, but is that an issue, or is there a certain amount of time that they should come back in and get them, you know, a new pair, or how does that work?
Yeah, to keep them running as long as possible, I always recommend a 6-month clean and check. So twice a year, come on in, we'll get them cleaned up, we'll do firmware updates, we'll make sure your ears are clean, all of those great things. With hearing aids, they typically last anywhere from about 3 years, the end of the manufacturer warranty, till about 6 years or so. After that point, it's time to kind of look into new technology. So hearing aid technology is like anything else. It's moving extremely rapidly. And just like your iPhones, they're always coming out with later and greater versions of things. They dump a lot of money into the hearing aid industry to try to get you to hear better on a daily basis. So after about 6 years or so, there's probably 2 or 3 generations that have gone by, and it's a good time to start looking at a new tech.
That's good to think of. It's kind of like with your, like you mentioned, your phone. Things are always changing now. I have to mention, because we are in Austin, we have musicians everywhere in this town and the surrounding areas. So you all get a lot of, and you don't have to talk about who because of privacy issues, but you all get a lot of musicians that come in, some famous, some not, you know, just musicians in general. What kind of services do you provide to musicians? We're on Austin Music Television. We play music all the time. What would you say to musicians out there that maybe need, you know, help, whether it's with hearing or just getting fitted for the ear, you know, pieces?
Yeah, so I love musicians. It's actually my specialty to work with musicians and concert goers, music lovers in general. With that, we have all sorts of services based on what they need, whether it is ear cleanings, which they're always sticking something in their ear. So instead of letting that wax migrate out like it typically does, it's kind of building back up. Another reason why we don't say not to use Q-tips there. With that, for musicians, there's a lot of helpful devices out there to help protect their hearing and keep them going and doing what they love for longer. So one of those is those filter plugs we talked about. There's all sorts of custom hearing protection. We can also do in-ear monitors here, which we do a lot of. So in-ear monitors are the little monitors that you'll see in their ears that they wear on stage to hear things, whether it's ambient noise to put a little bit of that in, but still protect their hearing, play click tracks, all sorts of things. They're really great.
And also you can sort of bling them out. I love how you see a lot of musicians, they have the decorations, whether it's diamond or just, you were showing me here a little while ago for one of your colleagues, I believe, you made a TCU one. So tell me the different types of things you can do with just the decorative part of it. Because they're musicians, they're up there, they're dressed up, they probably want that to match kind of their persona, I would think.
Absolutely. So with in-ear monitors, we can pretty much do whatever you want. We work with all major manufacturers of in-ear monitor companies, and we can help kind of get them designed however you'd like. The ones that I was showing you earlier were those TCU ones, and they're great pearl background with the old vintage TCU logos on those. I did those for a pair of demos for one of our bosses and owners. She went to TCU a little while ago, and I thought it'd be a really cool throwback for her. So.
And you said you love working with musicians. Why is that something that you kind of enjoy the most?
I'm really big into music. We have music going here 24/7. We always want to be in the music scene and enjoying that music lifestyle. Music's just something that everyone resonates with, and I'm no exception to that.
The cost of medical and hospital care in this country has skyrocketed in recent years. In 1972, Americans spent $83.4 billion on health. It's double the amount of just 6 years ago.
In terms of cost and health insurance, are these types of services covered by that? Or how can people go about figuring that out?
Yeah, really it just depends on your insurance provider. And with that, unfortunately, hearing aids and things aren't covered as much by insurance as we'd like, and how we've kind of petitioned for over the last many years. We're still working on that front, and it's been an ongoing battle. But some benefits are a little bit more than others with insurance. It really depends who you're with. And the best way to find that out is really to give them a call. The other thing we can do is if you come on in and you're interested in something, we can run it by our insurance verification team, and they'll get back to us in a couple days and get us a solid answer for us.
Well, I love how you said you all are working towards getting that to become a commonplace thing where it's covered, because just like anything else, that's so important for somebody's health and their self-confidence, right? I mean, hearing is everything.
It is. It makes a world of difference, and no one should go without hearing who doesn't want hearing. It's one of those things that our field of audiology has really petitioned for a long time, and it's going to be a fight that we're going to continue to battle.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm glad that, there are people like yourself and others in the industry that are working to make that the norm, because it really should be. When you talked about earlier the technology that's coming out, what do you see as one of the biggest changes coming maybe in the next 3 to 5 years? Is there anything cutting edge that maybe we don't know about yet that they're exploring that you've been a part of?
Yeah, so when it comes to the hearing aid manufacturers, unfortunately, they keep their cards pretty close to the chest. Pretty competitive field for them, so they try to keep it under wraps. But what I can say is that all the manufacturers are always going to be working towards better processing, which is how the sound gets from the outside world into our ears, how efficiently, how accurately, how comfortably, everything like that. The better processing there is, the better you're going to hear in background noise, which is really ultimately the goal for most people. Background noise is an area that most people struggle in, and you add a hearing loss on top of that, it's only going to compound the issue. So by increasing that processing and that background noise issues, they're definitely working on that a lot.
So if you want to just walk me through, if somebody sets up an appointment, they come in to get like an exam, can you walk me through I know there's different types of things, there are probably different types of exams, but your normal person who just comes in and says, hey, I'm having some issues, what are the different things that you're going to run them through when they come in here, just so they're aware of what that's going to look like?
Yeah, so what we're going to do first is take case history. We want to make sure that everything is kind of out on the table so we can explore all of our options and see if there's anything else going on that could be going on medically instead of just hearing loss in general. So with that, once we get that all taken care of, we'll take a look in the ears again, make sure everything's clear. We'll go through that testing process for your evaluation, and then we'll kind of pick out the best steps for you next, whether it's mild amplification, a full traditional hearing aid, an over-the-counter hearing aid, anything in between.
Tell me more about RK Audiology in general. I know you have a website, but tell me, just in terms of why you love working here, why this is a great place for people to come if they do want to get their hearing checked out.
Yeah, RK Audiology, I can't sing its praises enough, honestly. And I know I'm a little biased because I work here, but I love it because they welcomed me with open arms and they've been supportive throughout my whole process and career here. RK Audiology is actually, I just reached out to them randomly for my externship or residency period. And I said, hey, are you guys interested in having a student for my 4th year? And they said, yeah, come on down and we'll take care of you. I came down here blindly from Indiana, so it was kind of a big step that I was by myself for the first time in a long time. They welcome me like family, and they do the same for all of our patients.
If people want to learn more about RK Audiology, you have a website, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So rkaudiology.com, you can check out all of the information there, whether it's fax answers questions, we can do your scheduling online, or you can always give us a call as well.
And there's also different locations in the Austin area, right?
We do have one location up in Westlake there, and then we also have one here in South Austin off of Menchaca Road.
So preventative is really important when it comes to hearing. Why is it important to get in sooner than later? I mean, a lot of people, as we mentioned earlier in the interview, they just don't really, and I'm one of them, they just don't think of their hearing the same way they do other, you know, like your teeth, your eyes. I don't know why that is. I just don't think it's been as part of the things that you're taught when you're young. Like, it's always teeth and eyes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. With ears, I mean, it's just as important as teeth and eyes, of course. When it comes to your ears, early intervention is the best intervention. So if you don't want to be reactive when it comes to it, because there comes a point where it's a little too late to be doing as much help as we could in the first place. The earlier you get in, the better we can help you.
What are some things that people, you were talking about earlier, not putting Q-tips in your ears, what are some things that people shouldn't do when it comes to cleaning their own ears? Q-tips, anything really sticking in your ear, right?
Yeah, and we don't want anything, bobby pins, Q-tips, anything like that. I'm glad you brought this up, actually, because Q-tips are a big no-no in the audiology world just because they're really dangerous, actually. Not only are they pushing that wax deeper into your ear and kind of packing it in there, they're also a health hazard, just because if you've got a Q-tip in your ear and anyone comes in the room and accidentally bumps you, dog jumps on you, kid runs into you, anything like that, you could do a lot of damage and make that go too far in there.
So we don't often think of the ear, but tell me how the ear works. There's an anatomy of the ear. I even saw one of your pictures on the wall that kind of has the graphic of how everything works, but can you expand on that?
Yeah, so a quick breakdown of the ear is we have acoustic sound that comes in, those sound waves that we've all heard about through the pinna or the outside flappy part of your ear. When it goes through your ear canal, it then hits your eardrum, and the eardrum collects all of that sound wave and it moves it down into your middle ear. Your middle ear is comprised of 3 little bones called your ossicles. They're your 3 smallest bones in your ear or in your body. And when it comes to those ossicles, they move really fast back and forth, kind of like pistons, and the vibration of that sound is then carried down to your cochlea. Your cochlea is then filled with fluid in your inner ear, and when that fluid is moved, it activates these little hair cells. The hair cells then send the signal electrically through the nerve to the brain to say, hey, I heard something. So it's a pretty quick rundown of a pretty complicated system, but that's the basis of it.
In this view, we're looking into the middle ear. The semi-transparent membrane vibrating at the lower left is the eardrum. The bones connected with it are the middle ear bones. Since next to sight, hearing is our most important sense, it is fortunate that for most of us, our ears will serve well throughout life, helping us to understand and enjoy our environment.